Something that struck out to me there as well is that we're seeing a lot of conversation around firms trying to solve for this by exploring other countries because firms are finding it's convenient to go to the Philippines. It's like a known source of hiring. And then yes, it's convenient, but then the competition's high. But because of globalization, the Wize talent team, Danny, you found that most senior accountant salaries in what we might call labor arbitrage countries, they're all sort of coming to an equilibrium or like a mean. That's like a sort of mean for a senior accountant all across the world, and going to a place where it might have less competition could possibly be a solution as well. Jamie, like, could you expand on that? Because it feels like uncharted territory. It feels scary. Like we talk offshoring in Philippines, feels like second nature, feels like I'm hiring in Australia. But if you're talking about hiring in Indonesia,
yeah, well, the biggest thing that drives it, Thomas, is this time zone. So, Indonesia's a little bit further, across from Australia in terms of the Philippines, but firms tend to go with a course of least resistance, if you like. So, the Philippines has been great because, it's on similar time zones. And if you ask people to work all through the night forever, it's proven it has effects on your health long term when they say, you're doing the midnight shift or whatever, the graveyard shift. So essentially, Thomas, I think probably for more junior staff, particularly when you're training them, like it's better if they can be on, similar time zones, that's for sure. And as we've seen as well, in the US and Canada, they're slowly starting to hire from Mexico as well, and as Wize is as well. So, and generally as a rule of thumb, and I've forgotten the American friends here, but, generally Americans have been sort of a little bit behind in terms of the adoption of cloud technology, and New Zealand and Australia has been quite advanced, and even quite advanced with offshoring. So that's a generalization. So I think in Canada and the US, they're sort of rapidly catching up now, and part of that play will be Mexico as well, because Mexico's got the same population as the Philippines, essentially the same cost structure of GDP and that type of thing. So with the more senior staff who are trained, for example, you can have anyone anywhere. For example, Brenton, who's our CEO, he's in Ireland. We've got Claudia in South America, who's part of our marketing team. So once people are well trained up, they can operate from any country, essentially. The overlap of time is not essential in that sense.
And I'm really curious about that because I also hear questions from firms about this, but is the fact that, the team is getting built up by people from different countries, what sort of things should we keep in mind in making sure that the firm it keeps its fit? Like there's clearly a certain person that works with the firm that fits in with the firm, but what sort of emphasis should we put on that? I know if a person's just production and they're just grinding, that's not too much of a big deal. But, eventually where those people might become production managers and they have to manage someone who comes from a different country. Yeah.
Essentially, you want everyone connected. Like just for example, Brenton, our CEO, he regularly has a routine of meetings with Sammy, with Selena, with our marketing team. So I guess the thing that ties it all together is the meeting rhythm and routines. And so even the Wize team, would relate to that as well. So, we've got Sahel in India. So it's just a matter of catching up, making sure everyone, knows what their KPIs are, Thomas, as well. Like you don't want to micromanage people.
Yeah.
There's nothing worse. If you can just sort of give people, once you delegate certain tasks, just tell them what their target is. Tell them what their target is, tell them how many hours they've got to do, how many sales they need to do, whatever. Give them the tools to achieve the goal and then get out of their way.
100%.
If they need help or coaching, once you do catch up and review their performance, and if they're not hitting the targets, then it's not a non-blame. It's say, well, how can we do this together? How can we fix this? Why didn't we get this job done on time? Why aren't we hitting our sales targets? Do we need a bit more of a campaign? Do we need a better sales technique? If that's in sales. So you're always got to continually focus on continuous improvement and not in non-blame. You got to micro train, don't micromanage. There's no easy way. A lot of the times firm owners say to me, oh, well, I can't find, qualified staff. And, blah, blah, blah. Well, you've got to find people, you've got to invest in people, you've got to delegate, you've got to make the time. That's how you move forward. Is it easy? No, it's not easy, but there's only one way forward. And you want to, ultimately you're trying to build a business and build a team. So you've got to invest in people. And I know it sounds like a cliche, but it's so important, and that sort of brings me, Thomas, to when you do find the right people, what you want to look for is three things. Number one, the foundation, honesty, integrity. You've got to consider what is integrity and honesty. Well, it's five things. It's what a person thinks, what a person writes, what a person says, what do they say, and what do they do? And then the fifth one is, can someone, like a referee, confirm the first four? That's just essential, but if you're just going to sort of hire and shoot from the hip without testing those things, you'll get anything, and this is even what Warren Buffett promotes. Hire people that you can test and put through an array of tests, if you like, that checks those five things, and particularly the last one, the referees. That's extremely important. And then the other one layer to that is their responsiveness of energy. How fast, do they respond? What's their energy like? Because when they work for you, you'll get the same thing. Funnily, lastly, some people might think as first is skills and experience, right? That's the last thing we look for in the process, because, Warren Buffett has that in that quote, he says, if you find someone who's really, really skilled and really experienced and really energetic and really responsive, but they don't have any integrity, he says, like, run to the hills.
You can't do anything with them.
Yeah.
You can't do anything with them. You give them a workflow to manage, they'll just tick something off and it's not actually done.
Well, you can't even believe them, can you? So those three pillars is essentially what you need to hire on: honesty, integrity, energy and responsiveness, and then skills and experience. And if you can do your best to test those three things, it's not an exact science. No recruiting company in the world can sit there and say, we will hire every person perfectly every time. Like, that's crazy. I mean, human beings are the most complex creatures on the planet, let's face it. But you're better off having a system. And, it's like James Clear in his new book I saw at the airport the other day, Atomic Habits. He says you'll always fall to the level of your systems. You'll always fall to the level. You've got to have systems and processes in your business, and you'll only rise to the level of them. So hiring is extremely important when you're growing your firm. You need to master it as much as you can, have a methodology, use those 3 steps,